As I walk through the valley where I harvest my grain, I take a look at my wife and realize for lunch, just eat it.
The curly hair, Hawaiian shirts, and absurd lyrics made Weird Al Yankovic a household name. But behind the comedic genius was a man with a secret, one he's now ready to reveal. At 65, Weird Al is opening up about a life of discipline, integrity, and hidden rules that guided him along the way. He became a vegetarian in 1992, always asked permission for parodies even when he didn't need to, and refused to sell out for fame. With 5 Grammys and over 12 million albums sold, his biggest victory wasn't the accolades, it was staying true to himself. Born on October 23, 1959, in Downey, California, Alfred Weird Al Yankovic grew up in a quiet neighborhood as the only child of Nick and Mary. His working-class parents lived simply, but they kept a watchful eye on him, sheltering him from much of the outside world. Nick worked in a factory, and Mary was a secretary. They kept young Al close, warning him that girls had diseases and stuff. His childhood was largely spent indoors, alone. But that isolation was fertile ground for something extraordinary, a space where music and comedy could blossom in ways other kids never experienced. He didn't just grow up secluded, he grew up nurturing a bizarre brilliance. The pivotal moment came just before his 7th birthday when a door-to-door salesman knocked, offering music lessons. The choice was simple: guitar or accordion. His parents, sharing the last name of famous polka player Frankie Yankovic, though not related, chose the accordion. That decision set Al's future in motion. With no friends to distract him, he practiced endlessly, building a connection with an instrument most kids would never touch. For 3 years, he took lessons, then became self-taught. One day, he heard Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and his world shifted. Obsessed, he played the song on his accordion over and over again. That quirky instrument, in his odd, quiet world, became his voice. Skipping grades and starting school early meant he was always the youngest in class. He was smaller, awkward, and felt out of sync with everyone else. By the time he got to college at just 16, he was already considered the weird one. Living in Sierra Madre Tower at Cal Poly, Al's dorm mates thought he was eccentric. He avoided walking to the showers in just a towel. Once, they stole his clothes as a prank, forcing him to wrap himself in a shower curtain to make it back. They dubbed him Weird Al, at first as an insult. But instead of shying away, Al leaned into it. In high school, he wasn't the jock or the party animal. He was the valedictorian, a public speaker, and even started a fake school club called the Volcano Worshippers, just to get another photo in the yearbook. He didn't just stand out, he embraced it. Al was different, and he owned it, even as a member of the yearbook team, writing witty captions to make sure his mark was left. After graduating at just 16, Alfred Yankovic took the safe route and enrolled at Cal Poly to study architecture. It was practical, secure. But inside him, there was something more, a pull toward creativity that couldn't be ignored. Even in the rigid world of architecture, Al was anything but conventional. One of his professors once discovered him playing his accordion into a urinal the night before a major deadline. Turns out, Al had already completed the assignment, he was just doing his own thing, like always. He wasn't just earning decent grades. His heart was drifting somewhere else, toward comedy, music, and, of course, that quirky name everyone had started calling him. During his 2nd year, Al landed a job as a DJ at the student radio station, KCPR. And that's when it clicked. The Weird Al nickname evolved into his on-air persona. Rather than shy away from it, he embraced it. His shows became a playground of bizarre songs and offbeat comedy sketches that no one else dared to touch. Al pushed boundaries, cracked jokes, and reveled in the chaos of it all. It was messy, unpredictable, and entirely him. Rumor has it that he even flushed a toilet live on air once, though Al insists that's just a myth. What wasn't a myth was how the KCPR booth became the crucible where his future was forged. Then came 1978. Al recorded his first song, Take Me Down, for a local charity album. It didn't make a huge splash, but it marked the beginning of something bigger. The lyrics poked fun at local landmarks in San Luis Obispo, full of weird charm and, of course, his trusty accordion. That awkward instrument was starting to feel like a voice people might actually want to hear. But what happened next was straight out of a bizarre dream. It all began in a men's bathroom. A 19-year-old Alfred Yankovic stood inside the tiled restroom at California Polytechnic State University with nothing but his accordion, a cheap tape recorder, and a wildly strange idea. The acoustics in the bathroom were perfect, so he turned it into his recording studio. There, he crafted a parody of the Knack's My Sharona, My Bologna. a quirky, food-obsessed twist on the original. He sent the track to Dr. Demento, a comedy radio host, and the reaction was electric. Fans couldn't get enough, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. The Knack, the very band he had parodied, came to perform at his college. Nervous but excited, Al waited backstage, meeting the band's lead singer, Doug Fieger. Fieger didn't brush him off. Instead, he turned to a Capitol Records executive and said, "You should release this." Just like that, Capitol Records handed Al $500 and released My Bologna. On Christmas Day 1979, My Bologna hit the shelves and sold 10,000 copies in a month. It was the first real step in what would become a legendary career. But that didn't mean the road was smooth. By 1982, despite more of his songs playing on Dr. Demento's show, most record labels still viewed him as a one-hit wonder. They believed parody songs were nothing more than fleeting jokes. As Al himself later said, "They thought I'd have one hit and disappear." But Al wasn't giving up. He recorded I Love Rocky Road, a parody of Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll. It was catchy, zany, and bursting with energy. With the help of guitar legend Rick Derringer, he fine-tuned the track. Then, his manager, Jay Levy, sent it to an LA radio station. The response was instant and overwhelming. Fans couldn't get enough. That airplay pushed Tad Dowd of Rock and Roll Records to finally take a chance on Al, offering him a contract with Scotti Brothers. The wheels were set in motion for his first album to hit the studios. In 1983, Weird Al Yankovic released his debut album, and it had everything fans had been waiting for. The re-recorded version of My Bologna, a parody of I Love Lucy called Ricky, and the hilarious, offbeat track Another One Rides the Bus. The album crackled with energy. With the help of Dr. Demento, Al toured the East Coast and Midwest, performing for fans who were eager to see him. These weren't just any fans, they were his people. The shows were a blend of weirdness, fun, and endless laughter. The album cover looked straight out of Mad magazine, capturing the quirky vibe Al had always wanted. Even his music video for Ricky made it onto MTV, which was still in its early days. That small but significant success gave him the confidence to leave his mailroom job behind and go all in on music. But the road to success was never all smooth sailing. One night in 1982, Al and his band were booked to open for a new wave group called Missing Persons. It was supposed to be a big break. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. The crowd wasn't having it. They didn't come to hear comedy songs or see a guy with an accordion. They booed, threw things, and mocked him relentlessly for 45 brutal minutes. Crushed and humiliated, Al trudged back to his car, wondering if it was all over. But then, a kid approached him. "Are you Weird Al Yankovic?" he asked. Al smiled and said, "Yes, I am." The kid looked him dead in the eye and said, "You suck." It was the kind of moment that could have ended anyone's career. But for Al, it didn't break him. It taught him a valuable lesson. Don't waste time performing for people who don't get it. From that day forward, he focused on playing for his true fans, people who came to see the parody, laugh at the absurdity, and embrace the weirdness. That decision became the cornerstone of his career. Weird Al didn't climb to stardom by playing it safe. He did it by being unapologetically strange, bold, and utterly different from anything else the music world had ever seen. In the early 80s, no one thought a parody song could be a hit. But on December 13, 1983, Al recorded Eat It, a hilarious take on Michael Jackson's Beat It. When it dropped in February 1984, no one could have predicted how big it would become. Eat It reached number 12 in the United States, but in Australia, it hit number 1, surpassing even Michael Jackson himself. The music video was a direct homage to Jackson's original, with Al joking that it worked because he looked exactly like him. But behind the scenes, Al had personally reached out to Michael Jackson to ask for permission. Jackson thought the idea was hilarious and gave Al the green light. That approval led to Al's first Grammy win, and for over 2 decades, Eat It remained his biggest hit in the US. It wasn't just the music that made Al famous. His signature look, big curly hair, loud Hawaiian shirts, and, of course, the accordion, became his brand. Then came the food songs. Al wrote so many of them that in 1993, his label pushed him to release the Food album, a full compilation of 10 food-based tracks. Al didn't exactly love the idea. He saw the Food album as the label trying to cash in on his quirky image. But the fans loved it, and it became a surprise hit. Ironically, the album didn't even include Girls Just Want to Have Lunch, a song Al absolutely hated. He only recorded it because his label insisted on it. But food jokes stuck with him, whether he liked it or not. When he reached out to Kurt Cobain to ask about parodying Smells Like Teen Spirit, the first thing Cobain asked was, "It's not about food, is it?" Al assured him it wasn't, and Cobain gave his blessing. That genuine, offbeat charm won people over, even grunge legends like Cobain. But Al wasn't just cranking out songs. On April 1, 1984, MTV handed him the reins for a few hours and let him do whatever he wanted. And that's when ALTV was born. A fake broadcast, where Al played his own music videos, threw together hilarious fake celebrity interviews, and aired random, absurd clips. It was chaotic, quirky, and irresistibly fun. Over the next 2 decades, Al created 10 of these specials. They became a staple for fans, an essential part of his albums, and a must-watch for anyone who craved a bit of weirdness on their TV screen. In the early days of MTV, the network didn't have much to air, and Al filled that space with something that no one else could. He blended comedy and music in a way that felt fresh, groundbreaking, and perfectly him. That's how he started building his cult following. After the disappointing flop of Polka Party, Weird Al needed a win. And in 1988, he found it with even worse. The album hit the shelves on April 12, and the success came fast. It landed at number 27 on the Billboard 200 and stayed on the charts for 26 weeks. Just 3 months later, it went gold. By 1994, it had gone platinum, becoming Al's first album to sell 1 million copies. A huge part of that success came from the song Fat, a parody of Michael Jackson's Bad. The music video played constantly on MTV and even won a Grammy for Best Concept Music Video. To promote the album, Weird Al made a memorable appearance on Family Double Dare in May 1988. Things were looking good again. But just when it seemed like his career was back on track, disaster struck. In 1989, Weird Al made his feature film debut with UHF. Early test screenings were promising. Audiences loved it. In fact, their scores were as high as those for RoboCop. Al thought this might finally be his chance to break into movies. But when UHF hit theaters that summer, it flopped spectacularly. The reviews were brutal, and the timing was disastrous. UHF had to compete with massive hits like Batman, Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, and Lethal Weapon 2. The film never stood a chance. By the end of July, it was pulled from theaters. The failure of UHF hit Weird Al hard. From 1989 to 1992, he found himself in a creative slump. He later described that period as the worst slump of his life. At one point, Orion Pictures had talked about making him the next Woody Allen. But after UHF bombed, the phone stopped ringing. Industry friends avoided him like the plague. Al said it felt like no one wanted to even make eye contact. He wasn't depressed, but it was a crushing experience. For years, he focused on licking his wounds and figuring out if there was still a future for him in comedy or music. During this dark period, he made a tough decision. He ended his partnership with producer Rick Derringer. Derringer had helped him craft his first 5 albums, guiding Weird Al's sound and earning them Grammy Awards. But after UHF, Al knew it was time to take control. He wanted to produce his own music and grow as an artist. The music world was changing fast in the early 90s, and Al knew he had to change with it. His big comeback began with a simple phone call. Al wanted to parody Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, but he couldn't get through the usual channels. So, he called Kurt Cobain directly while Nirvana was rehearsing for Saturday Night Live. Cobain loved the idea and immediately said yes. The result was Smells Like Nirvana, released in 1992. It wasn't just a parody, it captured the moment perfectly. The song poked fun at how hard it was to understand Cobain's lyrics, but it did so with affection, never mocking him. The video even featured the cheerleaders from Nirvana's original Teen Spirit video, creating a fun and nostalgic connection. With Smells Like Nirvana, Weird Al was back. The song, and the album Off the Deep End, marked the end of his creative slump. The album was a hit, and the 1990s turned into a golden era for Al. He kept the momentum going with albums like Alapalooza in 1993 and Bad Hair Day in 1996. Bad Hair Day was a massive success. It opened at number 14 on the Billboard charts and featured the now iconic Amish Paradise, a parody of Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. Bad Hair Day became a pop culture staple. For many fans, it was their introduction to 90s rock and hip-hop, simply by reading the original artists listed in the album notes. Then came Running with Scissors in 1999, featuring tracks like The Saga Begins, a hilarious retelling of Star Wars, and It's All About the Pentiums, which poked fun at computer geeks. Weird Al's albums in the 90s sold over 4.5 million copies in the United States alone, with Bad Hair Day going double platinum. But what really set Weird Al apart was how he approached parodies. Legally, he didn't need permission to parody songs, but he always asked anyway. It was his way of showing respect. Some artists, like Kurt Cobain, were thrilled to be parodied. Others, like Prince, always declined. Al respected their wishes, even if it meant passing on great material. He even reached out for style parodies, where he simply mimicked a band's sound without copying their lyrics. It was a smart move that helped him avoid drama and maintain good relationships within the music industry. But not every situation was smooth. In 1996, Coolio exploded over Amish Paradise. Coolio claimed he hadn't given permission for the parody, despite his producer's approval. He tore into Weird Al in interviews and even mocked him in his own music. The feud dragged on for years until they finally reconciled in 2006, backstage at the Consumer Electronics Show. Coolio admitted he'd overreacted and joked that if Michael Jackson could laugh at himself, so could he. Weird Al had sent Coolio a handwritten apology years earlier, along with a share of the royalties. Coolio had never responded, but he finally accepted the peace offering. Through all the ups and downs, Weird Al never strayed from his core values. He respected the artists he parodied, made people laugh without tearing anyone down, and found ways to stay true to himself, no matter how much the world around him shifted. In 1992, Weird Al's life took a major turn when a friend gave him the book Diet for a New America. Before that, Al had already started cutting red meat from his meals, but the book completely changed how he viewed food. It wasn't just about health, it opened his eyes to the impact on animals and the environment. At first, Al couldn't imagine Thanksgiving without turkey. He thought it would be impossible to make that change. But once he made the leap, he realized he didn't miss meat at all. He even tried going full vegan, though he later joked that he sometimes slipped up and ate dairy, admitting he had to hand over his hardcore vegan card. Touring as a vegetarian in the early 90s wasn't easy. At some truck stops, his only options were applesauce or toast. But times have changed, and now he finds vegetarian choices almost everywhere he goes. Despite all these changes in his personal life, Al never made a big deal about it publicly. He kept his eating habits separate from his music and comedy, never pushing them onto his fans. But just a few years later, Al decided to change something else about himself: his eyesight. On January 23, 1998, he went to UCLA's Jules Stein Eye Institute for LASIK surgery, which was still relatively new at the time. His eyesight was so bad that he couldn't even read the largest letter on an eye chart unless his nose was almost touching it. But in true Weird Al fashion, instead of just paying for the surgery, he agreed to have it broadcast live on TV. Turning a nerve-wracking procedure into something absurd was typical Al. Dr. Robert Maloney, who had done the surgery on himself, explained that lasers would reshape Al's cornea to correct his extreme nearsightedness. After the procedure, Al said goodbye to his thick glasses for good. And when he showed up with long hair and no mustache in 1999 for the release of Running with Scissors, he looked like a brand new person. He laughed about it later, saying, "If Madonna can reinvent herself every 15 minutes, I figured I deserved one change every 20 years. But while his appearance was changing, something even bigger was unfolding in his personal life. A friend introduced him to Suzanne Krayeski, and after hours of phone conversations, they fell for each other without ever meeting in person. Al admitted he had a crush on her just from their talks. When Suzanne asked about his life, he joked, saying she could just watch his Behind the Music special on VH1. Neither had ever been married before, but they both knew this was something special. They tied the knot in 2001, and 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter, Nina. Al often talks about how amazed he is by her love of nature and the outdoors, contrasting it with his own childhood spent glued to the TV. He jokes, "Where did we go, right?" It's clear that fatherhood deepened his appreciation for the life he had built. But in a heartbreaking twist, Al's life took a tragic turn on April 9, 2004. That day, both his parents, Nick and Mary Yankovic, were found dead in their California home. They had lit a fire but forgot to open the flue, causing carbon monoxide to fill the house. Family members grew concerned after not hearing from them and found him too late. The loss was devastating, but Al's response surprised everyone. Instead of cancelling his tour, he decided to keep performing, just days after their passing. In a message to his fans, he explained that being on stage was helping him cope, even if it couldn't erase the pain. For him, singing in front of a cheering crowd gave him a brief respite from the constant sadness, showing not only his strength but also his belief in the healing power of music, for both his fans and himself. There's another quirky aspect of Al's story that fans can't get enough of: his bizarre connection to the number 27. It all started in the early 90s. One day, Al's drummer joked that Al just thought 27 was a funny number. But soon, fans started noticing it everywhere. He was given trailer number 27 at a fair. He joked about seeing movies 27 times. In one of his songs, he even sang about drinking beer 27 times. The number began popping up everywhere, from album covers to license plates, and even in his movie cameos. Al later admitted that once he saw fans getting excited about it, he started slipping the number 27 into his work on purpose. What began as a joke turned into one of those quirky little mysteries that made his fans adore him even more. But perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of Al's journey is his band. In an industry where bands frequently break up, Al's group stuck together for decades. Steve J., John Bermuda Schwartz, Jim Kimmo West, and Ruben Valtierra stayed by his side through it all. They weren't just backing him up, they were stars in their own right. Steve had written music for TV shows and released his own albums. Jim became a master of Hawaiian guitar. John, ever the meticulous planner, even ended up as a cartoon on The Simpsons more than once. Ruben, before joining Al, played with icons like Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin. They stayed together because they loved the music and respected how much work Al put into every song. They knew it wasn't just about silly parodies. Every note, every word mattered. Despite starting out with joke songs, Al didn't stay in that lane. He sold over 12 million albums, more than any comedy artist ever. With more than 150 songs and thousands of shows under his belt, he earned 6 platinum albums and 4 gold ones. His biggest hit came in 1996 with Bad Hair Day, which sold over 2 million copies. But even later, Running with Scissors brought in even more success. Along the way, he picked up 5 Grammy Awards and 16 nominations. In 2014, something extraordinary happened. His album Mandatory Fun debuted at number 1 on the Billboard charts. It was his first number 1 album, and the first comedy album to hit number 1 since the 1960s. His single, Word Crimes, even made it into the top 40, proving that even after 40 years, Al could still surprise everyone. And Al didn't stop there. In 2021, he announced a new and completely unexpected tour. No flashy costumes, no big screens, no huge parody hits. Instead, he wanted small, intimate shows where he played the songs he'd written himself, the ones most people hadn't heard on the radio. He called it the ridiculously self-indulgent, 3-week, advised vanity tour. Al played 133 shows, even making it all the way to Carnegie Hall in New York. It wasn't about jokes or grand production, it was about music and connection. And for Al, it was the most fun he'd ever had on stage. In 2022, Hollywood made a parody biopic about Al's life, starring Daniel Radcliffe. It poked fun at every serious biopic, with outrageous, fictional stories. The film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, earning high praise and a strong Rotten Tomatoes score. Al's impact extended beyond music and movies, he revolutionized comedy. In 2014, his Mandatory Fun album went viral by releasing 8 music videos in 8 days, ahead of the viral trend. When reporters compared him to Beyoncé, Al joked that she was copying him. His understanding of the internet kept him relevant with new generations, showing that comedy in music could be serious and impactful. Thanks to him, comedy music became a respected part of pop culture.